Guys, there is no secret that MMA fans and UFC fans in general have been a little bit unhappy with the state of the sport. Well, today I am presenting to you the complete guide to fixing MMA. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the UFC. This is going to be a slideshow type presentation. I'm going to talk about all of the issues that I have with the sport and everything, how we can fix it. From fighter pay to just press conferences, we're going to be touching on literally everything that is possible. And again, timestamps will be there as usual if you'd like to skip any part of the video. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Now, something that you're going to have to live with, unfortunately, is for some reason on Adobe Photoshop, the point form doesn't exactly line up all of the time. It's something you're going to have to deal with it, but this is what we're going to be talking about, okay? And again, timestamps will be there. Judging and scoring, press conferences, fighter pay, the activity problem, event schedule, broadcasting, pay-per-views and Fight Pass, Dana White, Joe Rogan, any drama, women's MMA, Contender Series, The Ultimate Fighter and New Talent, commentators and analysts, division changes, actual events, special events, and how to enjoy UFC again. These are everything that we are going to be talking about, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get started with judging and scoring. So, something that I've never understood about MMA in general, and this is the only problem, is that you might run into draws, but if you have to run into draws, so be it, okay? I think that we need to start introducing 10-10 rounds, because there are times where rounds have been so close that it's not fair to just not give somebody the round. I believe that draw rounds should absolutely exist, and the scoring criteria is ridiculous, okay? I get that it's damage over everything. I understand that, okay? But how many times have we seen it where it's just like some random fighter that the UFC wants to win, and all of a sudden takedowns matter. All of a sudden, oh, this fighter landed a throw and then they just held their opponent for the rest of the round. Let's give the round to him, even though the fighter on the bottom has been elbowing from the bottom, dealing the most damage. The guy on top's all bloody. Like, we need to have way more clarity on how these judges are scoring the bouts. And of course, something that I have always been an advocate for is implementation of open scoring. Every other sport does it, and these judges are so ridiculous. And I should have probably mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is only going to work with like honest people behind the scenes. We need an honest ecosystem in the UFC over here, because I would imagine that some of the bad judging is a result of the UFC. So this is something that we would need to fix, okay? Open scoring is something that I think is fair to the fighters, especially with so many decisions like not going a fighter's way. And the backlash that people have always, talked about when it comes to open scoring is of like, okay, let's say you and I are fighting, viewer and person making this video, we're fighting together right now. I beat you for 2 rounds. Why not just coast and kind of run away in the 3rd round? Well, this is something that we'd need to take into consideration in scoring, but I think it's also more important to give that fighter who is losing the opportunity, and if they're losing, like, they might come out guns blazing, and I think that will have more an effect on the fight than the person actually, just trying to run away and disengage from combat, which is something that I believe, again, we need to take into consideration with the scoring, okay? We also need to reduce the overemphasis on damage and scoring. I always thought that damage over everything was a ridiculous way to go about scoring, okay? Some people bruise more than others. Guys, when I sparred all the time, my nose bled. Like, you do this to my nose and my nose would bleed. I somehow over the years, after taking punches to the nose, it doesn't do that anymore. But the point being, these people exist. George St. Pierre, right off the top of my head, do you know how often that guy cuts? Alexander Hernandez is fighting soon too. The guy eats one right hand and it looks like he just got hit with like a train, It's not fair to people. People have different body types. People show damage differently. Someone like Cheeto Vera can get beat up for 5 straight rounds against Sean O'Malley and look like he didn't even enter a fight. That's not fair to the fighters. You need to take into consideration a lot more than just damage, okay? And it's been nice to see when we talk about something when you're when you're actually scoring the fight, we need to take into fighters' intentions when it comes into scoring rounds and scoring bouts in general. And this is something that, if I'm not mistaken, the MMA Guru started it, but I could be wrong about that. It's just where I've seen it lately, and I'm glad to see people actually picking up steam on this, because maybe one day we can actually get this talked about within the sport. Intention needs to matter. When you clinch with somebody, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to rest? Are you trying to avoid the sport that you're in? Are you trying to avoid combat? Are you trying to just hold somebody so you don't have to fight? That types of things needs to be taken into consideration when it's scoring. Is somebody only getting a takedown so they can rest on top of them and not engage in any sort of combat? That is some of the biggest points that I think that really need to be implemented into the scoring criteria, okay? Another big problem with the UFC, we need to apply immediate point deductions for fouls without warning, okay? No warnings. I'm sick of it. How many times do you see fighters like this? They fight like this. I'm gauging range. We just saw it, oh my god, I just hit my air purifier over there. We just saw it with William Gomez taking on, why is his opponent escaping my memory? But anyways, we just saw it with William Gomez. There are so many times when fighters use this to their advantage or just want to take a little bit of a break. Oh, well, I landed a nut shot, like in the Kyle Braujo fight that just happened last week, and depending on when you're actually watching this video, there are so many times where people want rest. There are so many times when people want to get a little bit of an advantage. There are so many times where people with reach want advantages, and all of a sudden the refs go, oh, that's a hard warning right there. After like the third time that it's happened, next time I'm going to take a point, and half the time they don't even take points. There needs to be immediate point deductions. If there are immediate point deductions, then fighters will be careful about this types of things. And this matters in a fight, guys. If you get like nailed right in the nuts, do you really think you're going to be okay with 5 minutes after taking like a full force blast? You're not going to be. Fouls have been a ridiculous issue in MMA. Somebody trying to get a takedown. Oh, let's stop it with a fence grab. Oh, you got a warning. Why not cheat? It's to the point. It's gotten so bad with cheaters in the sport where when I'm breaking down these fights and I'm actually betting on fights, I take into consideration whether or not a guy wants to abuse the cheating rule. It's ridiculous, man, okay? Something that I absolutely have always agreed with Israel Adesanya on is we need to impose financial penalties for fouls and weight misses supported by hydration and legitimate drug testing, okay? We all know that whatever drug testing system that the UFC has right now is a little bit of an issue. One championship has hydration testing, and it's been great, and a lot of times you have these fighters with no, like, ridiculous size advantage like we see over here in the UFC. A lot of people talk about weight cutting like it's just sanctioned cheating, and I agree with that. So we do need to have hydration tests in place, but something that I've always agreed with Adesanya on, he's really been the only one to really speak out about this, is there needs to be a financial penalty and a financial incentive to be able to make weight, okay? 20%, 30% going to your opponent is not enough. I say 70% minimum, because then you'd have people fighting in their natural weight class if they're worried about not making weight, and you would have people not abusing the system. How many fighters do you think that have just shown up and looked bigger and healthier, didn't have to go through all of that during fight week in order to just like, oh, well, I'm getting paid a lot, might as well give up 20%. There are people that abuse that. It's ridiculous. Something that I'm also for, we need to replace every single referee who doesn't enforce the rules. Hey, don't grab the fence. Hey, watch your fingers. And instead, like, I know it's the 7th time, but now I'm giving you a hard warning. Hey, fingers, like, it's ridiculous, okay? And something that is not a unique idea to myself is we need to require every single judge to hold post-fight press conferences. If somebody is robbed and we see like a Cheeto Veras or you know what, off the top of my head, Paulo Costa, Sean Strickland, we need to have judges explain themselves for why you could possibly give Paulo Costa that fight. We need them to explain themselves. We need to put them on blast. Shame culture is something that works within society. If this is truly not the UFC behind this scoring, and for whatever reason they wanted Paulo Costa to win that fight, those judges should be required to explain themselves. Something that apparently the PFL does, but I don't know too much about it, but I am so for AI judging coming in. The human error is very real, so I would like to have 3 human judges and 2 AI judges to get kind of like, a more objective look on things, okay? Oblique kicks also needs to go within the MMA system. I don't like a kick, and it sucks because I'm somebody who really, really likes a bunch of things that kind of like makes this more like a real fight. But the oblique kick is so nasty and so dirty where you can ruin somebody's career throughout this entire thing, and then they won't make money throughout their entire life again, and they wouldn't even have to suck it up and like go back to get a real job or things like that. I don't think that we should have something that is just a career-ending shot. I don't think oblique kicks are... We don't practice them for a reason, right? We don't practice them in sparring for a reason, because you might never be able to do MMA again. This is a sport. We want people to play the sport, so I think oblique kicks need to go personally. And of course, no matter where you are, referees need to be able to use instant replay. That's the only fair take with this entire thing. So that's what I would do to fix judging and scoring. But as we continue on, guys, I want to talk a little bit more about press conferences, which is something that I really, really miss. I really miss throughout this entire thing, okay? Something that made me fall in love with the UFC was all of the trash talk, all the press conference, all of the hype with all of the fighters. So something that I miss more than anything, though, is the go big style press conference. what was it? Did we only have that one time where you had all of the cards that were planned and then you had all of those fighters? You had all of those fighters, and that made for some of the most memorable moments ever. You know, who the fuck is that guy? You don't even have to have Connor there. You could have all of those fighters, and they would naturally be able to trash talk each other. You could build future storylines, and you could, like, tell a story when two fighters end up lining up. They were talking trash back at this press conference a long time ago. I miss it. We need to have it twice a year, at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year for, like, the end of the year. And something that a lot of people have been talking about also is the face-to-face segments. I, like a lot of you watching this video, always love the face-to-face. It gets really personal, and that's when you can really brew up some rivalries. Like, you have rivalries that weren't, like, you know, too in-depth until you had something where these fighters were talking one-on-one, kind of like a Darren Till and a Jorge Masvidal. Of course, we all like to talk about John Jones and Daniel Cormier. Do you guys remember how excited we were for these fights? It was because of the press conference. It was because of the things like the Go Big press conference. It was because of things like the face-to-face. And this next problem is more of a recent problem. We need to allow fighters more freedom in trash talk. I don't know why, and we're going to get into Dana White. Don't get me wrong, guys. We're going to get into Dana White and the problems with Dana White in the UFC right now. I don't know why we're not letting fighters trash talk. I don't know why we're not letting fighters promote the fight. I will bring you back. I think it was a Jorge Masvidal thing. I can't remember what it was, where you had these two fighters literally building something up, and Dana White was like, come on, guys. Come on. These guys aren't even fighting right now. Guys, knock it off. Like, why? This used to happen at press conferences all of the time with fighters that weren't even fighting. You had Cruz versus Team Alpha Male. You had Conor McGregor and Michael Bisping picking fights with literally anybody that's on stage. Kevin Lee, Michael Chiesa, I believe they were actually booked, but you get the point. We need to allow fighters to trash talk whoever they want to trash talk. It creates these moments, and a lot of people really miss this this feeling that the UFC had when everybody was trash talking. We actually had promotion with the fighters. Now, something that we're going to get into. You know what? I had this on the list and I was going to touch on it with press conferences, but we're going to talk about fighter pay, and something that I'm going to talk about in there is, like, we're going to have bonuses for, you know, particular amounts of promotion that a fighter actually works into, but sorry, I know that's a point on screen right now, but I feel like it'd be better to just talk about during the fighter pay. So we're going to talk about that moving forward, okay? Exclude bland reporters from asking questions. Anybody up there who comes up and says, oh, so hey, Stephen Thompson, the crowd seems to like you. How do you feel fighting at 43 years old? None of that. Hey, did you eat at this pizza place in New York? None of that. Hey, I just want to say, can I count on you in my MMA parlay? Oh, excuse me, Joshua Van, the fans seem to like you. How does that make you feel? I can't take it. These press conferences have gotten so dull, and they were the backbone of promoting for the UFC. They were so good. They made you look forward to it every single time. Do you guys remember back in, like, the 2011 to 2016-ish era where you actually couldn't wait for the press conference? You had the entirety of Fight Week, and you had the press conference to look forward to, and you had the actual event to look forward to. And a lot of times after that press conference, you were hyped up to watch that actual card. Plus, you have all these moments that could have gone viral, and more people perhaps being interested in the fight, checking it out. It was all great. We see this every once in a while with fan questions, but I think that fans do a good job asking questions in press conferences. Just, you can have a section with the journalists, and you can have a section with the MMA fan questions. Like, I look back and I think about the things like when everybody was, you know, going crazy about Holly Holm at the press conference. It's those types of things that go viral and really make the MMA community happy. Something that I would like to see, and I'll talk about both of these right now, along with those journalists, because we are going to ban a lot of people like, oh, hey, Alexandre Pantoja, Brazil's behind you. How does that make you feel? You know? It's crazy. Excuse me, Mr. Stipe Miocic, do you think you're going to win on Saturday night? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I would like to see a lot of MMA media personalities come in and actually, they are so invested into the sport that someone like that I'd like to be in a status of one day. I'm talking like a Lucas Tracy. I'm talking like an MMA guru. You can invite these people in, or if they want to come, give them some special pass, whatever it is, and they can actually ask questions, because these people care about the sport. These people work so hard and invest so much of their time into the sport. They would ask proper questions to maybe even incentivize, like, you know, a little bit of a viral moment, or get the crowd going a little bit, something along those lines. And guys, I would reintroduce Ariel Helwani. I would. Okay? He was very good at instigating properly. You would have to give him conditions, though. You would have to say, Ariel, any of your, like, snake-like tactics, because we know that Ariel Helwani could, you know, jump the gun a little bit, maybe go a little bit too far, and that thing that he did with Brock Lesnar was absolutely too far. I say, if like I was in charge, guys, and I'm typically not a second chance type guy, but I think Ariel Helwani is very good at what he does. He asks legitimate great questions. He's not afraid to question Dana White. He's not afraid to, give tough questions to the fighters, and I think that he would actually participate well in press conferences, just as he used to in the past, man. And every once in a while, he was good at egging fighters on. We had those moments with Nick Diaz. We had those moments with Rampage Jackson. So I think that he does a very, very good job. I would allow him with conditions. Don't be a scumbag. And one more mess up, and you're out of there. So I think this personally would help the press conferences a lot, and I would love to know what you guys think about this down below. But here's what I was excited for, okay, guys? Because I believe I have significantly helped fighter pay. Okay, we're going to walk through all of this. I have the entire fix for fighter pay over here, okay? I'm excited to talk about this, and I would love to know what you guys think about this down below afterwards. Now, I know that we're going to be throwing around a lot of money with my proposal over here. The UFC just signed for what, $7.7 billion? They can afford this, okay? They can absolutely afford with what I'm presenting you here, okay? For the base fighter pay, increase it to 30K minimum. I know some of you might be still yapping down below talking about how that's still too low. There are some fighters that don't deserve to be in the UFC, and I think actually 30K as a base pay is pretty healthy. And as you promote yourself, as you get a little bit, as you prove yourself in the sport a little bit, you can negotiate for a brand new contract. I'm talking 30K minimum, right out of the gate of the Contender Series, right out of the gate of the Ultimate Fighter, new talent, whatever it is, okay? Now, we already spoke about this. I am for a 70%, maybe even more, purse deduction for any weight misses, things like that. And something that I should have talked about the judging and scoring. Why are fouls not part of a purse deduction? You know, a guy who's clearly shooting, like kicking to the nuts too much, a guy who's clearly poking in the eyes too much, that will, I guarantee you, before it's like, oh, it's a fight and things happen. Like, that's true. But if we were to actually take away some of the money that you're making, I guarantee you this would happen significantly less, okay? I don't know why we have hydration testing on there. I think that was a point that I had with the clear fines, okay? Sorry, that's not with the fighter pay, excuse me, okay? Anyways, so this was my big idea for fighters making more money. The UFC will provide bonuses for social media engagement and viral growth. I'm talking like within a time frame, maybe like 2 weeks out or specifically during fight week. Now, of course, this will only really work with an honest system, an honest, honest people behind the UFC. And we're assuming that, because I know that, especially with judging and stuff like that, it can get very difficult. And I believe that the UFC is against fighters in some sense sometimes, you know what I mean? So it's going to have to be honest, okay? I think this would incentivize fighters to start trash talking more, to start actually, promoting themselves a little bit, making for some fun clips and embedded, anything along those lines, or even taking themselves into their own social media and showing off their personality a little bit. Maybe putting a little bit more work into fan base, because we have a lot of fighters nowadays who just sit down, think they deserve the world, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let my fighting speak for itself. Very few people are like that, like someone like Robbie Lawler. Very few people. So the UFC will be able to track, and you can look into YouTube analytics, TikTok analytics, whatever it may be. You can look at Google Trends. You can look at you'll be able to look. And this type of thing is public too. And the UFC paying attention to it, I think that we should pay a lot of attention to social media. What fighters are getting spikes in social media? 10K for noticeable growth in social media and more eyes on a particular fighter or a particular moment. If it's a press conference moment, let's say I'm sorry, off the top of my head, a who the fook is that guy? Both Conor McGregor and Jeremy Stephens were part of that exchange. Both of them will get 50K because that was a trend-setting moment. You guys understand what I'm talking about? So if there's noticeable growth, if you see a little bit of spike, okay, more people are paying attention to Carlos Prates right now when Carlos Prates is going out and smoking cigarettes. Noticeable growth. A viral spike, something that kind of takes over for an hour or a night, I think that deserves 25K. And if you are trend-setting, if you have someone or if you are taking over the world, like an Ilia Topuria moment knocking out Charles Oliveira, that was trend-setting. A Conor McGregor winning a second belt, that was trend-setting. I'm talking about things where the entire world was talking about. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a knockout. I don't care if it's a moment embedded. I don't care if it's something that's insignificant as Alex Pereira playing with Pikachu. Whatever it may be, if you're getting more eyeballs on the UFC, if you're getting more eyeballs on yourself, that helps the UFC. That makes people more interested in the UFC and the fighter. The UFC can afford this. Track the metrics, 10K, 25K, 50K. I think that's phenomenal, okay? And that puts the responsibility on the fighter as well to be able to promote themselves, and it's a win-win for everybody. This is good for the UFC. This is good for the fighters. You can even get a lot of fighters, implementing fan interactions and things like that. I'm telling you, man, this would absolutely work, and it would save a lot of people's lives that are struggling with money. Just create a social media post, do whatever you need to do to go viral. Now, something that I do love from One Championship, guys, is we need 50K bonus performances for every single finish. You finish your fight, you get $50,000. I love when One Championship does that. It incentivizes finishes. It'll make fighters bang more, and a lot of people have been talking about how the fights are a little bit too technical. Some people treat it like a sparring match. No, there are people who will fight with all of their heart for $50,000. You see it in One Championship all the time. That's why I always talk about how One Championship is my favorite organization. These guys go out to kill each other, and these guys go out to fight for $50,000 bonus. And again, $7.7 billion the UFC just signed for. And I'm not one of those guys who's just like, oh, well, the UFC's rich, they need to pay the fighters more. No, this is something they can afford. If a fighter gets a finish, $50,000. Do you know how much better those fights will be? I challenge you to go watch a One Championship card and watch how hard those guys fight. Honestly, if you haven't watched one of those cards, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. But it doesn't stop there, because we have even more opportunities for fighters to make money. And again, I believe something like this would be a little bit more fair, and this is something that we're going to talk a little bit about, because this also helps with the activity problem of the UFC, okay? I believe scaled minimums for ranked fighters should be established, because at this point, when you get into the ranked area, and I know that these guys put their bodies on the line, right? I understand it's for every single fight, but when you're taking on the best of the best, and when you were giving every single little bit of an ounce to yourself into the sport, you are a professional athlete at the top of the division. Whether or not you are popular shouldn't matter, okay? I believe, and first of all, you can sign contracts just like fighters have for hundreds of thousands, whatever the UFC deems worthy, but at the very, very minimum, which I should have mentioned earlier, we're not just going to have a top 50, we're going to have a top 20, okay? So top 20, minimum $50,000. Top 15, minimum $75,000. Top 10, minimum $100,000. Top 5, minimum $150,000. Champion, minimum $200,000. Do you know how much this will incentivize activity? We're going to talk a little bit more about activity soon. And again, this is something that the UFC could afford. At the end of the day, I do agree with the MMA community in some sense in saying that, hey, these are professional athletes. If they are at the top of the division, if they are a champion in the UFC, they should be making money like this. And again, this is something that the UFC could afford. And finally, we need to allow fighters to secure individual sponsorships. If you want to talk about the shorts just being Venom, I guess that's fine, but in their post-fight speech, allow them to carry whatever they want. When they're walking out, allow them to carry whatever they want. Throughout fight week, they can wear whatever they want. I don't see an issue with that, okay? So I actually believe that this is the best, and I'm sorry to gas myself up. I actually think this is a great thing, okay? So I'd love to know what you guys think about it down below. I think that I have done a significant improvement over here to fighter pay, but it doesn't stop there, because we also have a major activity problem within the UFC. So, all right, first off, the fighter pay solution that I propose is probably going to encourage inactivity, because again, I'm throwing around a lot of money if I was in charge of the UFC over here. Why do fighters need to fight? That is a problem that we already have now. You could argue that fighters aren't making too much money right now because they're not fighting, and then we're having a star issue, and then we are having all of these divisions completely held up, okay? This is what needs to happen. If you are going to be able to make this much money in the UFC, this is what needs to happen, okay? Fighters need to be mandated to compete at least once every 9 months. That's fair, because we have a 3 to 4 month post-fight recovery period and an 8 to 10 week camp length if needed. 9 months is oftentimes more than enough for an active fighter in their prime. I get it if you're like older, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that, okay? Now, if you are inactive, you're not forced to fight every 9 months if you don't want to fight every 9 months, but if you are in the rankings, you're out of there, okay? If you do not fight within the 9 months with the money that you are making, get out. You're holding up in the UFC, you're holding up the rankings, and you are participating in ruining the sport. If you don't want to fight, fine. You also need to re-earn your spot within the rankings. You don't get to come back. You don't get to come back and fight a #1 contender. You need to fight someone else that's unranked. You need to re-earn your spot, and you are going to have your ranked pay taken away. Let's say you're making $100,000 minimum. That on top of whatever amount that you signed for, now you're just getting whatever that you signed for. You're losing that base pay. You're losing that $100,000 that you're getting. You're losing that $150,000 that you're getting minimum, okay? That I think is pretty fair. If you're throwing around that kind of money, you need to be an active fighter. And same deal, we're done with the champions just fighting when they feel like it. We're done with the champions picking their opponents. We're done with the champions going, nah, I'm going to fight maybe once a year. What Whaley's doing right now? Ridiculous. What John Jones was doing? Ridiculous. If you do not fight within 9 months, you're stripped, you're gone, and you do not get to walk right back into a title fight. No, you have to re-earn your spot in the rankings. You have to fight your way back to the top, okay? There are to be zero expectations unless, and this is where I was talking about how it must be an honest company doing this, because I could see it getting a little bit shady, you know? Someone that the UFC doesn't like, oh, well, they didn't want to fight, but we didn't offer them anything. So unless you were off for medical reasons, there are no exceptions to any reason as to why you can't be inactive. I don't care what you have going on. 9 months. You can take care of whatever you need to take care of within 9 months. You fight at least once in that 9-month period. And if you're injured, it is going to be a UFC approved, honest, and the keyword being honest, physician that takes a look at you. Because what I believe happens is that a lot of fighters just go, I'm injured. And then that's like the end of the story. They have to pull out of the fight. No. You have to go by UFC approved physicians. And again, this is the problem where you need to make sure that it's an honest physician and there's no shady business going on behind the scenes, okay? I think along with what I just talked about with fighter pay and solving this inactivity problem, I think this would create a very healthy kind of ecosystem for the fighters, okay? But let's talk about the schedule for the actual events right here, okay? Obviously, something that a ton of people dislike, and I don't hate it as much as everybody else does, but I do acknowledge that obviously the fights are better when there are fans, okay? We need to eliminate the frequent use of the UFC Apex with limited exceptions, I get it. If there's times where you need to travel less, you have a lot going on, you have big events back to back, then sure, use the UFC Apex, but we can't use it as much as we've been using it, okay? Now, there is one time that I believe the UFC should be taking time off, and that's at the end of the year. And I get that, like, I know that not everybody celebrates Christmas, but I think that they have a pretty good system with taking time off at the holidays, giving everybody a chance to reset. I would say that there are a lot of fighters out there that do celebrate Christmas. We know a lot of the roster likes to take time off around there. So if they want to have a break, I think the holidays is actually a perfect time to do that. But other than that, why are we even taking any weeks off, period? Schedule events weekly. Get that advertisement revenue, build the, and what we're going to be talking about, getting new talent too. With all of this activity that we're going to be seeing from the fighters, we'll need more cards, okay? We need to have weekly events with no time off whatsoever, okay? And I believe with what we see with pay-per-views, which at this time isn't really enough, we need better promotional campaigns for every single event. I'm talking we need, and just like what I say right here, we need weigh-in shows for every event, not just pay-per-views, press conferences, social media countdowns, embedded series, and we need to put actual work into these types of things. I think the weigh-in show is phenomenal. The press conference, they need a ton of work. Social media, sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't. Countdown episodes are bland, embedded is bland. I used to watch Countdown and Embedded religiously, but the UFC is just kind of like put it on repeat, and I don't care about it at all anymore, and I know that you guys can, you guys understand what I'm saying, and I would imagine a lot of you agree. So we need to put a ton of work back into it like we used to. Go back and watch UFC like countdowns prior to UFC 200, and the amount of work and the storytelling that they put within those, yeah, whatever team was working on it back then, bring them back. Something, and this isn't my idea. I wish that I could remember what YouTuber came up with it. I'm sorry, guys. I saw this. Oh, it's not coming to me. I wanted to give credit because I thought this was phenomenal from whoever I heard it with. I was listening to an MMA podcast somewhere, and they mentioned that no matter what, or like obviously if it's feasible, right? Champions should be defending their belts in their hometowns. Could you imagine what kind of moments that could create? Not only for the main event too, like just the entire card being built around this main event fighter, like Dricus du Plessis defending in South Africa. How cool would that have been? Everybody backing their guy, and then you create like a real, I guess you could call it primal sort of atmosphere where this guy is trying to take the crown from the king, and the king is in his kingdom. How cool would that be? How many times have we seen like George St. Pierre defending in Canada? All of those types of things. Could you imagine a Conor McGregor defending his belt in Ireland? What it would be like the eruptions with the crowds, all of the booing, all of the cheering, like that could make for some events like we've never seen before. And we've seen it, like, you know, like for example, that's perfect. Like over in England, they are so good with this, backing their English fighters. That's amazing. Okay. If possible, if it's feasible, a champion needs to defend their belts in their hometown. That would create some of the best moments in UFC history, man. Okay. So that's how I would fix the event schedule, but let's talk about the actual broadcasting part of this, the pay-per-view and the Fight Pass app, because there are some things that I would change. And obviously, we know that the UFC now signed with Paramount Plus, and this is what is going to be, I wish I could remember, was it 7 years that they signed for Paramount Plus? Something along those lines. Regardless, UFC is going to be on Paramount for a very long time, okay? So I want to still incorporate Fight Pass into this because Fight Pass is a phenomenal streaming service. So what we're going to talk about it. You know what? I'll just mention that thing that I have at the bottom here. Fight Pass is going to now be a channel add-on to Paramount Plus, and it will be accessible on both services. I don't think the UFC should scrap Fight Pass. I don't think they should sell it to ESPN or anything like that. Fight Pass is great. So I wouldn't like to see that go. And if Paramount still wants people on their app, just make it a channel add-on and keep Fight Pass as is. I think that's totally fair, okay? So I would like to see, and I think this is fair. Obviously, I would not like to see a jump up in price, but I'm talking about for what I'm going to be promoting with Fight Pass over here. Obviously, there does need to be a bump up in price, okay? So $39.99 a month, including all pay-per-views, Fight Nights, Contender Series, Ultimate Fighter, full fight library that they already have, and YouTube content. Because they're sneaky good with what they do for the YouTube. Because a lot of people, and I'm somebody who has YouTube Premium, so I don't care, but I would imagine a lot of people like watching their YouTube content through Fight Pass because they don't have all of those ads within YouTube, okay? Of course, we also need to have a little bit of a discount for a yearly plan, but there is going to be... Oh, and I forgot to mention, too, that there's going to be the tier for Fight Pass that you have right now, you know, the cheap tier, but if you have the premium, this is what you'll get. You'll get the live corner audio. You'll get behind-the-scenes documentaries. That's something like, I think they used to call it the good and the bad. The thrill and the agony, that's what it was. The thrill and the agony after event. That would be so cool. Post-fight locker room footage, fan Q&As, moderated live chats. That's something that LFA does. I love the live chats. That really, and honestly, for a lot of people watching the event solo, it's pretty helpful, okay? Featured tweets, and they do such a good job with doing that. And if you could actually start putting stuff in through Fight Pass for a chance to get your voice actual on the broadcast, there's a lot of people that would like that. And why hasn't the UFC done a betting app? There is so much that you can do throughout betting, and so many people work through so many different, betting apps. Like, I've had issues with betting apps before. I would love a UFC betting app. Why? I don't know why they haven't thought of this. They promote gambling constantly, and it wouldn't be difficult to like get a little bit of a one-up on people. Plus, you could just have a sign-up bonus. Hey, you sign up, you get to play with $50, whatever it is. Again, with all the money that the UFC has right now, they could absolutely afford something like this. Plus, you have all the degenerates wanting to build parlays. Everybody's going to lose that $50 in absolutely no time. And then people are going to get addicted to it. People are going to be funneling you even more money. But you can beat it. You can have those lines out way before any other app. And those people who love to bet on UFC like myself, I think that'd be incredibly helpful for the UFC, okay? And that could be a UFC Fight Pass premium subscription. I think that'd be really, really helpful with all of those things, and I think that would be worth $39.99 a month, okay? Now, this isn't something that would help me, but I could see this being part of like some sort of special package. Merchandise, ticket discounts, priority access to ticket pre-sales. There's a lot of people who, like, let's say there's an event that you really want to go to. Hey, I'm going to buy Fight Pass, or if I already have Fight Pass, here's your reward for being a dedicated fan, okay? Something else that I love about UFC Fight Pass is how easy it is to watch other promotions. As a hardcore MMA fan myself, I know there's a lot of you that watching this channel are also hardcore MMA fans. They have some of this now, but this is what I would love to see on Fight Pass, and I would love to see some more sports come on Fight Pass, okay? LFA, Lux Fighting League, Faber's A1 Combat, Cage Warriors, and they should acquire Octagon. I love Octagon. I think it is an excellent, excellent, excellent promotion, but their app is beyond garbage. I hate watching Octagon on the Octagon app. If Fight Pass can sign Octagon, there are some really, really, really high level and fun fights and just a fun event in general that I think could really, really boost the value of UFC Fight Pass, okay? Also, we have UFC BJJ. That's live on YouTube. There's no reason for it to not be on Fight Pass. And if they're expanding into the BJJ territory, why not get UFC Muay Thai? There's a ton of people that would love to watch that too. There's a lot of UFC fans that don't realize that they're actual kickboxing and Muay Thai fans. So if they are UFC fans, you can promote the heck out of this, and then maybe people will want to go check out Muay Thai, show some viral KOs, things like that. You can have those people who are constantly complaining about the Dagestani style watching Muay Thai. Again, there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that they are more of kickboxing and Muay Thai fans than they are MMA fans, okay? Now, something that Dana White has been talking about is that pay-per-views might not be gone completely. If you are subscribed to Fight Pass, the price of the pay-per-views right now are beyond ridiculous. at the very least, very most, I should say. Sorry about that. At the very most, $50. $50 if they are to remain. The price that it's at right now is absolutely ridiculous. And I believe that the pay-per-view, if you are to have one, it should be about $20, $25. It is not worth the $90 that everybody's paying right now. It's ridiculous, okay? We also should be hosting UFC mainstream live chats on pay-per-views, fight nights, etc. Of course, what are they signing for Paramount Plus for? You need to watch this type of stuff on Paramount Plus, but if you want to watch anything on the Fight Pass, still be on the Paramount app. Just make it a channel add-on so you are still watching whatever that you're watching on Paramount. I think that is the best way to go about things, and I think this would help a lot of UFC fans. I think this would be better for the UFC in general. But let's get out of the technicalities for the UFC for just a second, because there's something that I want to talk about for three people, that being Dana White, Joe Rogan, and Nina Drama. These are people that I, well, for the most part, highly respect, and I love for them to be part of the UFC. I think all three people need to be sat down and have serious conversations. And I'm not joking. I know we like to meme about this stuff, but I'm being completely serious over here, okay? I think it is time for Dana White to retire. And I know I'm just a guy behind the microphone. Who am I to say something like that? It's clear that the passion is no longer there for Dana. He's shutting down press conferences. He's making press conferences like 10 seconds. He's not answering anything at post-fight press conferences. He's old. He's been doing this for a long time. It's clear that his vision is elsewhere. He wants to grow Power Slap. He's getting into boxing. He's getting into all of that promotion. And he clearly, if he does care, he cares very little about the UFC compared to what he used to care. I don't know if it was after the sale. I don't know if it's him getting old. I personally think from an outside perspective, it's time for Dana White to either take a back seat or to step down. Give the promotion, or put somebody at the head of the promotion that actually has a vision and wants to grow the sport. Dana White is comfortable as is, okay? And I know that might sound arrogant from my position to say, because again, who am I? It's just from an outside perspective. This might be what needs to happen, okay? Now, I wrote here, Nina Drama needs to be monitored and limited to interviews, okay? Because while we all hate Nina Drama for the most part, it's undeniable the numbers that she gets. There's a lot of people, SIMPing over here. There's a lot of people that really, and you know what? I would say the vast majority of us probably liked Nina Drama when she first busted onto the scene, when she was doing interviews. She was very, very good at seeing a unique side to fighters and bringing out a little bit of their personalities and really, really helping out with the social media. I think she was very charismatic, very good at what she does. The problem is, when I say that she needs to be monitored and limited to interviews, Nina, if you're going to work for the UFC, you can't be on Twitter, like, just, doing what you're doing, seeking attention. Oh my God. The MMA fan base is going to be so mad because I'm dancing. Like, all of that stuff, knock it off. Stop flirting with the fighters. Stop, just, you get what I'm talking about, the type of stuff that Nina Drama does. She's so good at what she does when it comes to just purely interviews and those fun types of things. But I don't want to watch, I don't want to watch something where we just all end up making memes about the cameraman, okay? I don't want to watch Alex Pereira touching her feet. I don't want to watch that content. Most of us don't want to watch that content. And if somebody is into that kind of content, then quite frankly, they probably have a issue with adult content in themselves. What Nina is good at, keep her at doing so, and say, Nina, you can't do anything else on social media, okay? You need somebody over her shoulder at all times. And finally, we need Joe Rogan. We all meme about it, okay? But there is a lot of people who are very tired of Joe Rogan. People forget, man. Benson Henderson in that calf kick. He's a marauder. And it's clear that Joe Rogan is, I don't want to say going senile. That sounds so insulting. But Joe Rogan is at a point now where he doesn't care about the new talent. He doesn't know the new talent. And kind of like Dana White, he doesn't care to get to know the new talent. The fan in him seems to be exiting just a little bit, but I also think it is Joe Rogan just getting old, and he's repeating himself every single time. How many of us that are hardcore fans can repeat word for word what Joe Rogan is going to say in some sequence of events? The steel cups. He has so many things that we could repeat just off the top of their head, but everybody loves Joe Rogan. By that I mean the casual fan base loves Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan just needs to be talked to and say, Joe, you need to put a little bit more effort into learning these new fighters and not just going, whoa, I actually just hurt my neck a little bit doing that. So I think these three can be super beneficial for the UFC, and they have proven to be beneficial for the UFC. It's just, there needs to be a little bit of a change. There needs to be a sit down. There needs to be a talk with these three people, okay? Let's continue on to, unfortunately, a topic that's a little bit touchy, that being women's MMA, okay? Now, YouTube, I'm very grateful to be on this platform, and I would never in a million years suggest such a thing. I'm just echoing what some of the fighter fan base would say. A lot of people, and I know you're going to comment down below calling me a weasel, okay? I'll stand on what you believe in. I know I'm going to get those comments. I'm from Canada. Free speech doesn't exist, okay? Women's MMA needs a huge boost in talent. There is a reason why a lot of people and a lot of the MMA fan base, and this is YouTube, I would never say this. I personally really, really love every single women's MMA fight ever that's ever been put on. It's been the greatest thing. I love it more than the men's, okay? But people often refer to them as bathroom breaks, okay? How many times throughout events has a card been like sick finish, awesome finish, great fight here, just to have all of the energy brought down in a co-main event just because we're on ESPN and we need to fill that spot with a women's fight? How much energy has been sucked out because you put like two people that are incapable of fighting inside of a co-main event spot or a featured fight, and then people just like the energy level completely dips? How many times does that happen? Countless, okay? So we need to limit main card features to high-profile title fights only. I'm talking Weili Zhang. I'm talking, not even at this point with the Valentina Shevchenko, maybe Kayla Harrison, like a Kayla Harrison, Amanda Nunes. That's a fight that you can put on. Aaron Blanchfield's usually exciting to watch. Those types of things, okay? I also think it would be good for the vast majority of WMMA title fights to headline fight night events. We used to do that. We used to have titles on fight nights that nobody cared about. Why not bring that back? You could still give them respect in the main event. Throw it on a fight night card. That's totally okay with me, okay? Now, I don't know what they need to do here, okay? The reason that I wrote in brackets here, aim to beat one championship, because like I always talk about, one championship is my favorite organization to watch. Guys, I really legitimately look forward to the vast majority of their WMMA fights. Whether it's Muay Thai, and I know like MMA, you know what? We'll stick with MMA. I legitimately look forward to it. I don't know what they do differently. I don't know if it's the women over in the East, but then again, they're just arguably healthier in general. Maybe that's it. They're just better athletes. They actually have technique when they fight. They're actually a pleasure to watch. I love watching WMMA over one championship, and I don't know if the UFC just needs to scout for new talent from the East. Don't know what that is. Focus on quality. We need to find some quality fighters to sign to the UFC. Buy them out from one championship if you have to, because they have some excellent talent over there. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if it actually is a health issue over in the West over here, because I would say like the vast majority of WMMA fighters are from over in the West, aren't they? I'd have to really sit down and think about that, but I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But yeah, you have Weili as a champion. Let's see. Sorry, I just hiccuped in the middle of that. And finally, the 135 division, 145 especially too, but that's kind of already gone. Just scrap it. Get it out of here. That division is beyond saving. Keep flyweight. If you want to introduce atomweight, if you can find some good talent, that's fine, but keep strawweight, flyweight, women's bantamweight. There is no good fights there. Besides, and this is the only one in recent history, Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. After that fight, take off. Have this whole thing where it's like it's going to be the final 135-pound division champion for the entirety of the UFC's universe, okay? Make that a high-profile fight, and whoever wins that fight, okay? We're scrapping that division. Women's MMA can be great, but we need to do some fixing over on the UFC's end, okay? But let's talk about scouting for new talent, because I think the Contender Series is great. I miss the Ultimate Fighter, and we need to talk about new talent as well, okay? I don't know what they used to do. Whatever the old scouts did, bring them back. I don't know if it was people just sitting down like when we used to watch Dana White looking for a fight, just going to random events, looking for some talent, signing some random people. Whatever they used to do it, because we're getting a lot of bums in the UFC these days, okay? Something that's great, though. Something that's phenomenal. I'm actually recording this about 20 minutes before a Contender Series starts. I love the Contender Series. The fans love the Contender Series. Dana White is actually passionate in the Contender Series most of the time. I think we need to host it more than once a year. Twice at the minimum, possibly 3 times. If you get more talent to the UFC, especially with the activity problem that I solved, especially with more people making more money and more fighters are going to fight within a 9-month period, and maybe even more because they're getting more money, or have that incentive to not get booted out of the rankings, or want to fight more to get a ranked spot, especially with something like top 20, you might need more talent. Plus, I'm having events every single week throughout the year. We're not taking any breaks. If you sign more people, that's a good thing. We'll need more people. I think that's great. Hold the Contender Series. It's something that's very well received by the fans. It's something that Dana White is passionate in. Why not have it more than once a year? I think that'd be great, okay? The Ultimate Fighter. We need to make sure the Ultimate Fighter has two coaches that really, really, are good with social media. Like Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is a good idea. Conor McGregor, Uriah Faber was a good idea. We need to make sure whoever's, participating in the Ultimate Fighter coaches, they need to have presence in social media. They need to have a following to actually bring over there, okay? That one's a little bit iffy. There might be a little bit more to do with the Ultimate Fighter, but that's at least a starting point, okay? Any winners from anything, whether it's the Ultimate Fighter, whether it's new talent, whether it's a Contender Series, 3-fight contract, and a pay-per-view debut, give them a spot. I'm not talking about like on the pay-per-view main card. I'm talking about give them an opportunity to create moments for themselves on a big card. So a pay-per-view card, either that or like a numbered card because we're going to get rid of the pay-per-views. 3-fight contract, give them 3 chances to impress you because there are some times where these fighters and these new talents get thrown into the pack of wolves. Things happen. You lose fights. This is a sport after all, and it's one of the most difficult things that you could possibly do ever. I say give them 3 chances if you're going to bring them into the UFC, okay? And finally, obviously, we need the UFC to do a little bit of more work. We need Dana White to do a little bit more work in increasing promotion for all of these platforms. How often do you see things like, you see a little bit on the Contender Series, but how often do you see anything about like, hey, it's the UFC, we just signed this new prospect. It's not hard to make a YouTube video. It's not hard to make a TikTok. That's bare minimum. Give them some promotion. And again, we will now have these incentives for these fighters to get a little bit more loud and actually put work into themselves along with the UFC to promote themselves as a brand. I'm telling you, my fighter pay thing would fix a lot. But the UFC needs to do more work on their social media. They need to do more work at the press conferences, whatever it may be. You can't just say, oh, the Ultimate Fighter's here. That's it. And it airs. No, have some moments from the Ultimate Fighter. You know what they were doing with Conor McGregor? You'll do what you're told. That's what people wanted to go and tune into the Ultimate Fighter for. Rampage, kicking down a door, those types of things. The Ultimate Fighter can still be successful. New talent can be way more successful. The Contender Series can be better than it already is, okay? Let's get into the next topic, that being commentators and analysts, okay? Now, I'm somebody who thinks that a rotation of these commentators would be great for the UFC. It could get them known a little bit more over time, especially with weekly events. There are so many people that are so good at what they do. It's just the UFC doesn't really give them a chance because every single time there's a high-profile card, Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, Jon Anik. That's fine, and I like that. But I would like to see people rotated in and out, especially for fight nights, okay? So we need to implement a regular rotation for commentators with fan favorites on pay-per-view cards. And I know that I just said we need to cycle through them all, and I know that people like Daniel Cormier, depending on who you talk to, you get my point. If somebody is, well-received within the MMA community, give them a chance on a pay-per-view, okay? I love the weigh-in show. I love what they do with the weigh-in show. I don't know if the weigh-in show would be better with more people, but perhaps you could create some better moments on there. Like Daniel Cormier, Laura Sanko, they are all, like everybody on the weigh-in show is usually so good at what they do, and usually they have one guest. I would like to see them experiment with a couple more guests on there. I would imagine it would be better for the weigh-in show, create some better moments. I'd like to see what they have to do there, okay? Now, like I talked about the press conferences, I would love to see MMA media personalities to join occasionally with these types of things. Like I said, with things like the press conferences, I'm not talking about commentary. That's very important to note. Like I wrote it right there, not talking about bringing them on for commentary. But when it comes to like maybe the analyst desk, maybe, when the fights end up finishing early and they circle over to like the ESPN desk, I don't know if we're going to end up keeping that with Paramount, but you can have something along those lines, right? You can have people like, Anthony Smith, Chael, what they kind of do with, Karen Bryant. You could put some MMA media personalities within there. I think that'd be cool because, again, you have so many people that are so educated in what they're talking about, so passionate about the sport, and would love to do this, and would do it for free, UFC. I'd say give them a chance. Maybe you can strike gold, okay? Like we talked about on Fight Pass, with the premium subscription, there's a lot of people that would like to connect with the UFC, the fighters, the analysts. Bring on some fan-submitted questions. You can fill in time doing that. I would love to see that from the UFC. And for the people that I would love to cycle through for both commentary and analysts, these are the following names, okay? Jon Anik, Brendan Fitzgerald, Mike Goldberg, bring him back, Paul Felder, Dominic Cruz, Laura Sanko, Michael Bisping, Daniel Cormier, Megan O'Leary, Frank Mir, Brian Stan, Kenny Florian, Alan Joban, Anthony Smith, Michael Chiesa, Rashad Evans, Forrest Griffin, Chael Sonnen, Josh Thompson, John McCarthy, Boss Rutan, Demetrius Johnson, Robin Black, Brett Okamoto, Chris Weidman, and Alexander Volkanovski. I think that all of these fighters have displayed an excellent ability at what they do. Sorry, I know not all of them are fighters, but all of these fighters/analysts have displayed an incredible ability to add to the conversation and add to their own moments. They are great at their own thing with oh no, I forgot one. Crap. That's going to look ugly to look at now. I've seen a little bit from Cub Swanson. I think he's great at what he does. Cub Swanson should be added there too. Man, I hate when I do that. I forgot to add something. Crap. Pretend the name Cub Swanson is on there as well. But whether it's a fighter with a podcast, whether it's a fighter like Kenny Florian who used to do commentary, I think all of these people are good at what they do, and whether they're commentating and whether they're doing work at an analyst desk, they add to the conversation. They have great moments. There's a couple guys that have been doing LFA commentary. John McCarthy was very good over at Bellator, for example. We've seen these people do great work in either the UFC or other organizations, and you can just rotate them everywhere. Like maybe one day Paul Felder will be at the analyst desk, and maybe we can have multiple analyst desks. Maybe we can have, a combination of somebody like Mike Goldberg and Forrest Griffin on commentary. I would love to see a rotation of all these people because, again, I don't think that they don't give these people the chance, and they are every single name that I mentioned here, they are so good at what they do. The people that have had the opportunity to do it so far, and all of these people have had at least some sort of analyst work and some sort of commentary work done before. I've loved what they've done, okay? And like I said earlier, and with the MMA personalities, perhaps I should have excluded that last post over there, but yeah, people like Ariel Helwani, MMA Guru, Lucas Tracy, people that are popular in, outside the UFC. I think they could do some great work with the analyst desk. I'm not talking commentary. That's reserved for the people on this list over here, but I would love to see all of that. And I think that all of them could add a little bit of special something to the UFC, okay? There's a little bit that I want to change with the divisions, though. Something that a lot of people would love to see. Of course, like we spoke about earlier, we need to scrap the women's bantamweight division. Get it out of there. There's no talent over there, and there's that division is beyond saving. There's no good fighters that you could pull to get the 135 division going again, okay? Now, we need to add a new division. How many times have UFC fighters and fans wanted to see a 165-pound division, change welterweight to 175, and have a 165-pound division? That whole thing never made sense. We have 10 pounds between every division and just change that over at 170 and 185. Why? No, 165 would be a perfect weight class, and plus, with the proposal for the changes to the UFC that I'm making, we're going to have more fighters coming in, and you'll have a brand new division, more ranked fighters, more high-profile fights, more title fights if you need to fill in big names for cards. I think this will be an excellent idea, and I've never understood why Dana White was always so against it. I wish that we could get the thought process, because all we ever got was, no, we're never going to get a 165-pound division. No, that's ridiculous. Something along those lines. I don't see an issue with it. I think that would be excellent for the UFC and the health of all of the divisions. I think that'd be great. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the actual event. Hear me out on this first one, okay? Hear me out, and I don't know if this is the right thing to do, because I don't know how other people feel about it. I get that people love Bruce Buffer, but I find myself looking at Bruce as time has gone and as somebody who's been invested in this sport as a hardcore fan for well over a decade, okay? Buffer has gotten so much worse in the just loving to hear himself speak, taking forever. I find myself when Buffer used to do the announcing for the UFC events, I'm talking about the main event, the co-main event, but even just anything now. I used to get hyped up going, it's time, or just him announcing. He's reached a point now where he loves to hear himself speak. He's reached a point where he just drags it on for way too long, and I find myself going, okay, Buffer, come on, let's go. We need to change that about the actual event, okay? The walkouts for the UFC could also do... This is something that I think that the UFC lacks in comparison to something like the PFL and Bellator. They need to have that screen that they all have, where they have some graphic with some highlights, or just a flag, whatever it is, whatever the fighter wants, with the display of the headshot and the name, and them walking down a ramp with fans to the side. Whatever they want to do there, it just creates for more of a, fun atmosphere for the fans of the event, and there's a lot more iconic walkouts even in other organizations compared to the UFC, okay? Now, something that I would love to see more of is any gimmicks that the fighters want, and of course, within reason. Though I used Michael Page as an example here because that's the first thing that came to mind is Michael Page has a twin brother, and something that he wanted to do was have all of the lights go off and have his twin brother in the cage, so it looked like Michael Page walked out, lights off, he's in the cage, lights go back on, he's disappeared, and he walks out again. How cool would that be just for the event in general? That's just one example, but I would love to see more things like, I personally thought it was cringe, but maybe it's because I don't like Israel Adesanya, but, Israel Adesanya doing the dance with all of those people coming out before his fight. Conor McGregor had somebody singing the Irish national anthem. I might be remembering that wrong. He had somebody singing some song for some reason. Might not have been the national anthem. Sorry about that if I'm going to sound stupid, but you get my point, okay? There are a lot of fighters who could, again, create more viral moments with these types of things. It could add to the event in general. Maybe it would incentivize more people to buy tickets to a UFC event if you could get more interaction in that sense, okay? And for any fighter who announces their retirement, give them a package. It's beautiful when they do this. You acknowledge all these fighters. And of course, if a fighter just quits, like perfect example being Paul Craig, which we watched at the time recording this video last weekend, we didn't know that he was going to retire. He just took off the gloves. I'm done. Of course, you don't have a walkout package for him, but like for something like Dustin Poirier, make a big deal about it. Have the retirement package, have the video. It really makes for something really special, and it gives these fighters a proper send-off, and all of the fans will remember that. Like, the problem is, this wasn't a retirement package, but I will forever remember as one of the greatest moments in UFC history, the Korean Zombie, with all the fans singing, like, give him his walkout song, like, for the final time, everybody's going, zombie in your head, zombie, you know, things like that. It's a poor example because, again, the Korean Zombie was, it didn't have a retirement package, but it's those types of moments that you could generate from retirement packages. Plus, it's so disrespectful to give retirement packages to some fighters and then just some fighters without. And we know these fighters are going to retire too. No, it doesn't take long. Have somebody at the UFC with any little bit of editing, like anybody who's in the YouTube space, you can come up with a retirement package if you are a decent editor and have been working in the YouTube space for a little while. 10 minutes, 20 minutes for something like decent, like what the UFC's been putting on. Have a nice little emotional song with some highlights, easy to find. And with the UFC's library, you can do the same type of thing. I think that is something that you can need to do, and the UFC could do a little bit more work coming into their event, guys. Now, something that I would absolutely 100% love to see are special events, okay? Hear me out. I know we're getting a little bit, this is something that's a little bit more unrealistic, but it could be done. It could be done, okay? Something that I have always wanted to see was events where opponents are unknown to both the fans and the fighters. You have a complete mystery card. These fighters do not know who they're going up against. And of course, you would have to sign off on that, right? You would have to sign off for that. And leaks are bound to happen. The Ariel Hawanis are bound to happen, right? Some people on the inside going, hey, it's going to be Paddy Pimblett, Michael Chandler. No, make an example out of somebody the first time it happens. Have like a particular fine of something unreasonable. I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars. That would incentivize people to like not talk about it, okay? And any little bit of source, anybody online, you know, yipping and yapping about, I've heard it's this fight. No, legal action, period. It can be done. It can be done. And how cool would it be? Maybe like twice a year, once a year, have events where you don't know what you're going to watch. How cool would that be? And it'd be cool for the fighters too. Like, oh, guys, that's something that I always wanted to see. It could be done. And if I was in charge, I'd make it done. Have some ridiculous thing inside the contracts of the fighters, okay? And anybody in the responsible, like anywhere near the UFC, okay? Now, I don't know why we don't talk about this a little bit more, but the Las Vegas Sphere was one of the greatest events. It was my personal favorite event of all time. Did you see how much work went in the Sphere? And I know that apparently it was a ridiculous amount of money. I don't know if they necessarily need to spend that because Dana White was talking about like the greatest video editors or whatever. I think it can be done cheaper, to be honest with you. That was a one-of-a-kind experience, and I would love to see that yearly for the UFC. The Sphere event could be something like a brand new like International Fight Week or the NYC card. A Sphere event. Noche UFC we do every year too. Put the Sphere event on it too. I'd love to see that, man. And I will say, speaking of International Fight Week, they have been slacking a little bit on the International Fight Week cards. We need to pick that up, UFC. We need to pick that up. You need to stack those cards. We're talking about Fight Week. We need to have a massive card. Something else that I would like to see is an implementation of 2 cards on a single day every 3 months. Guys, for those of you who are hardcore fans, how many times have you spent time sitting down? Like, you know what I look forward to the most, guys? When I used to do this with Bellator all the time when it was on in the morning, but now I kind of do it with Octagon. If you have a pay-per-view event and Octagon at the same day, I make an entire day out of it, and it's like the best day in the world. I watch Octagon all day, and whether it changes whether or not if I'm watching fights with friends, then I'll make it like more of a drinking affair, but a lot of times too, my family's really into fights. We make it a giant family day. I go over to my mom's early in the morning with the baby and the dog. We hang out. My mom and I watch Octagon. As everybody comes over throughout the day, we end up watching UFC. For those people who love fighting and love violence, I love making a day out of multiple events. I love it with all of my heart, and I guarantee you there's a lot of hardcore MMA fans that like to do that as well. So experiment with it, UFC. What if you were to put on 2 cards every 3 months or so? I think that'd be pretty cool. If you're a fan of UFC, you'd like to watch that. Plus, you could get that timing down for people overseas maybe. I don't know what it would line up to be, but you can change the timing so you can get your international fans, you can give them an easier time to watch your events. I think that'd be pretty cool for them to implement. Plus, again, we will have more activity with this proposed fix to the UFC, and we will have more fighters with this proposed fix to the UFC, okay? Now, something that Pride used to do. We need a single-day tournament with multiple fights for one fighter once a year. Sign up like the good old Pride days. Make it a nice card tournament. Make it a tournament where fighters are fighting multiple times throughout the night and one man reigns supreme. How many fighters on the roster would be up to signing up for that? Make it a grand prize. I don't know what it would be, but how cool would that be? That's something that Pride used to do, and that, like, the fans really got behind that. And there's no reason to believe that UFC fans nowadays wouldn't get behind something like this too. Another thing that I would love to see, and I know LFA has done this. I know either Bellator or PFL has done. I don't recall which, but Nation Nights. You can, when you work to get, and this is what I was talking about, like how I really love the idea of champions always defending within their nation. You can have an entire card, Brazil versus USA. You know, I don't care what it is. Ireland versus England. I don't care what it is. Canada versus USA. That type of thing really, really, really gets MMA fans involved. Every once in a while, have a nation night. Maybe every 3 to 5 months. That's another thing that would give people to, like, look forward to these special kind of cards. And you don't even have to stack it. People, like, I don't think the US is probably the best example for this. Like, Canada's a perfect example. Ireland's a perfect example. England's a perfect example. There are so many people you could even get, like, if you want to get specific, like Dagestan fighters, whatever it is, have a bunch of people from one area or one nation. One nation's a perfect way to describe it. Have one nation fight against another nation. It makes for such really, really cool experiences. And depending on where the fight takes place, oh, that would be so cool. Dude, could you imagine having, like, a Canadian or a Canada versus England night where the event takes place in Canada and every single fight is somebody from England trying to take down the guy from Canada? Do you know what kind of, like, atmosphere that would create? That would be so cool. And you could cycle through every single nation on the planet. I would love to see something like that. Special events would really, really, really help the UFC, and I would love to see all of this. Now, guys, it's very important to note that UFC fans have been having an issue, loving the sport. And I won't touch too much on this, guys, because I don't want to sound like I'm giving you a giant lecture over here like we need to do in the gaming space, okay? There are a few ways to make yourself enjoy UFC again, because there's a lot of people who clearly don't like the UFC as much as they used to. The first being, don't force yourself to watch it. I will never understand why people do that, man. It's the same thing we talk about in the gaming space all the time. Specifically depending if you're coming from another channel or not. We have a Fortnite channel. I'm a guy with too many YouTube channels. Go check them out. Description down below. There are so many people, it's like, I hate this game. I can't stand it, but they force themselves to play it. If you're tired of the UFC, if you don't want to watch this shit Apex event, don't watch it. Is it really that hard? Why are we forcing ourselves to watch things and then you'll end up making it hate more? I don't understand that. Plus, you guys, a lot of MMA fans, you are expecting way too much from every event. Do you expect every event to be like UFC 189 and UFC 205? Guys, all you need to do is oftentimes tune into the prelims of the card. The prelims, more often than not, deliver. Those guys are hungry. So don't make yourself watch something you don't want to watch. Don't expect too much. Just sit down and enjoy the product for what it is. I'm happy to have fights every week. I look forward to the sport, man. I'm a very happy MMA fan, and this is something that some people might not want to hear. Guys, if you find yourself unhappy with the sport, if you guys find yourself unhappy with anything in life, take up running. Run 2 kilometers a day at minimum. You will see your life and your positive attitude change completely. Or your attitude will change to be more positive, if I didn't say that wrong, okay? You need to eat healthy. You need to take care of your body. You will find yourself transforming. You will find yourself becoming a very happy individual. And then you might sit down, you might watch UFC, and because your body is in a little bit of a better state, you're not in a state of constant misery, perhaps you'll enjoy this thing a little bit more. I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there that are chronically online consistently talking about how horrible the UFC is. Meanwhile, they're just bed rotting, stuffing just chip after chip, food after food inside their mouths. Of course you're miserable. Of course. This is something you should be doing for any hobby whatsoever. If you like watching UFC, there's a way that you can fix that, and this matters more than any of you may think it was. And I would imagine there's a lot of you too watching this video that are in a pretty healthy state. Back me up in the comments. Come on. Like, I know there's work that I need to do, but I'm running every day now, guys, and The reason I say this is because I've been on and off running my entire life. Like, my entire outlook on life just changes so much when you get into running, when you start eating healthier, once you start dieting. It's like incredible, the transformation of happiness that you have. And finally, the best thing you can do, if you're involved in the sport, take up MMA. You are more likely to appreciate the boring fights if you are somebody who's taking up MMA yourself. If you're somebody who gets involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you might enjoy the ground game a little bit more because you might see what some people are, working for. Like, oh, you might become one of those MMA nerds, where it's like, oh, maybe you can get a butterfly sweep over here. You know what I'm talking about? You might appreciate the sport for what it is, and you won't be consistently just looking for like pure violence. And don't get me wrong, the violence of the sport is phenomenal. I love that, okay? But there's a whole technical side that a lot of people don't understand what they're watching, and it's pretty evident if you ever watched it with some casual fans when you're like really invested in this way. Like maybe someone got a really slick takedown and you're looking and I go, I can't believe he just landed that, in comparison to somebody's like, oh, on the ground again. If you're interested in this sport, take up MMA, take up anything. If you're worried about brain damage, take up wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, something like that. It'll help you enjoy this sport a little bit more. So there's a lot that the UFC needs to fix, and there's also a lot that people themselves as fans need to fix. But guys, I would love to know what you think about this entire thing down below. And because we do not have another Fixing UFC video, I encourage you to check out this video. YouTube thinks that you would like this video the best. If you want to continue watching the channel, my commentary, I would love to have you guys over there. Thank you so much for being here. I was excited to put this video out. Let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.